Praise God. Give thanks to the Father in all that you say and do. Well, amen. Amen. Sing glory, hallelujah. Christ the Lord has died for you.
Well, I can think of places I would not want to be when the Lord came back. I would not want to be in a bar, for instance. And if I were married, I sure wouldn't want to be with the wrong person when the Lord came back. So yeah, there's an application. But she just didn't want to be there. And I think, if I were sitting at home right now, just because I wanted to be home, I just decided not to come, I sure hate for the Lord to choose that time to come back. And so it's something to think about, isn't it? What's the effect on our relationship with God when we deliberately say, that's just somewhere else I'd just rather be than with His people? When you think about forsaking the assembly, when you look that word up, it means to abandon, desert. It means leave in straits, leave helpless, totally abandoned, utterly forsaken, to leave behind among, to leave surviving. And so the idea is probably a little more extreme than we sometimes maybe use it. But the idea is, what if everybody just stopped coming? It's one thing if one person decides not to come. But what if when you make that decision, then you've left the work for everybody else? Well, how often can that happen and the work not be left abandoned? That it is to leave in straits, to leave helpless, totally abandoned, utterly forsaken, to leave behind among, to leave surviving, just trying to hang on. How many places close? Because the numbers just dwindle down to next to nothing. And so whoever decided to no longer come have left the others in a bad way, haven't they? As they try to continue on with the work. So it's something to think about. Well, used to we talk about Sunday night. Well, we discontinued Sunday night some years ago, and I think for a valid reason. It wasn't for just don't want to worship. That we had people, and still do, who drive a good distance, don't they, to be here. And so we decided that what we would do is that we would not have Sunday night service anymore. But what we would do is this, that we rearranged a little bit our habit on Sunday morning Bible study. Remember how that, and I guess telling how long I've been here, but you remember how at one time, Sunday morning, before Bible study, there'd be songs led. And at one point, there was no set amount of songs. It's just whoever wanted to lead a song before Bible study on Sunday morning would lead a song. So we decided, well, instead of singing before Bible study on Sunday morning, that we'd go straight to Bible class and just have more time, strictly for teaching. And we would focus, since we were not going to have Sunday night, we're going to really focus on Sunday morning, that we're going to get right to our Bible classes. And we're going to be ready to start. We're going to get into our classes. Well, that ready to start part gets a little touchy sometimes, doesn't it? But that was our intent. But also, as preacher, I remember being told, don't look at the clock. And so I also remember mentioning one time, we had a different clock then. I said, and I don't know what it was about that clock, but I couldn't read it. And this was years ago when I could see a lot better than I can now. It was a glare on it or something about the face of the clock. I said, I cannot read that clock. The next time we met, there was a brand new clock back there. I guess folks wanted to be sure I could read that clock. But we had said, we're not going to worry about the time on Sunday morning. Not going to watch the clock. It's easy, isn't it, to kind of fall back into the usual patterns and kind of forgot that we were going to refocus on Sunday morning because we no longer are going to meet on Sunday night. Well, then we also meet on Wednesday night. Well, that's another decision, isn't it? Are we going to participate in Wednesday night in Bible study? The church here has decided that as part of the work here at Stanley Avenue, we're going to have a Bible study on Wednesday night. Well, each person has to decide. Now, I know there are reasons. Sometimes you can't be here. There's distance and there's the danger of traveling at night for some. We understand that. But as a conscious decision, I could be, but I just don't see the need of it. So I'm just not. Those are decisions, aren't they, that affect us spiritually. And it's something, I think, for us to be aware of and to be conscious of and to consider, well, how's this affecting my relationship with the Lord? Well, what about with non-members? About our light, as we sang about before we started with the sermon. Christians, let your light. Well, that's what the Lord said, isn't it? Matthew 5, verse 16. And so there's an influence that we have with others. And so if we are not participating in the work, and that's sometimes most obviously seen when we decide we're just going to stay home instead of assemble, then how does that affect other people? You know, people do watch. People notice. And they your neighbors take note. If, they could almost set their watch by many, couldn't they? Must be time for church. They're getting in their car. It's Sunday morning. It's Wednesday night or whatever the time is. They always go to church. Well, if we start staying home, or if we see people out and about when normally we would be at church, what's the effect on other people? In 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 17, it says, "For the time has come for judgment to begin at the house of God. And if it begins with us first, what will be the end of those who do not obey the gospel of God? Now, if the righteous one is scarcely saved, where would the ungodly and the sinner appear?" And so it's saying that through life, being faithful is an ongoing challenge. It's not that we're going to be saved by the skin of our teeth, like somehow it limits God's power. It's not what he's talking about. He's talking about that there is an ongoing challenge in obeying the gospel and becoming a Christian and then remaining faithful. Well, what about the effect we have on others who maybe decide not to even live up to the challenge or not even attempt the challenge because they see us and we don't seem to be too interested and we don't seem to be too concerned about it, and so maybe it influences them in a negative way. And then you think about 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 32. It says, "Give no offense either to the Jews or to the Greeks or to the church of God, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved." And so our outlook is, what can I do to encourage other people to seek the Lord? Well, when they see that worshiping with my brethren is important to me, it influences them. And the reverse is true. When they see, well, it doesn't much matter one way or the other, and kind of hit and miss, could be there, not be, well, that influences people as well. And you think about to give no offense. That doesn't mean that they just don't like it. Sometimes we say, oh, that offended me. That's a big word now. That offended me. It means I don't like it. But that's not how the Bible uses the word. Well, rarely. I started to say at all, but rarely. Here's what the word means if we offend someone. Having nothing to strike against, not causing to stumble. It's used of a smooth road, metaphorically of not leading others to sin by one's mode of life. A stumbling block is a type of offense. Somebody's walking along and you trip over something. Well, if our life is influencing someone in a negative way, they're tripping over that. Like, well, it must not be too important. So-and-so, he doesn't come either. And so that becomes a stumbling block. So I don't think I see a big need either. Or so-and-so talks uses language like that, and they're supposed to be a good church member, or on we could go with the examples. And so when we do something that leads somebody else to do wrong, we put a stumbling block in their way. That's why Jesus, when Peter said to him, "Oh no, Lord, you're never going to be arrested and crucified. That's not going to happen to you." The Lord said, "Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are an offense to me." What does that mean? Jesus didn't need to hear that. Jesus was about to be praying in the garden, "Father, if it be your will, let this cup pass from me." He didn't need Peter tugging at him, saying, "Oh, Lord, don't go that way. Don't take the cup the Father has prepared for you. It's not going to happen to you." And the Lord's like, "Peter, you are offending me. You're causing, not that the Lord stumbled, but it's the type of thing where you're not encouraging somebody, you're discouraging." And so give no offense, the Bible says. And so when we're not putting our priority on the Lord's cause, on His work, it could be, somebody else could be thinking, "Well, I don't have to put so much of a priority on it either." Well, what about the church itself? In Colossians 3 and verse 1, it says, "If then you were raised with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ is, sitting at the right hand of God." When we are faithful to assemble, what's it saying about the importance of the church? And the reverse. When we decide there are so many other things I could be doing, I just don't really have time this time. What are we saying about the importance of the church? Are we seeking those things which are above? Or are we thinking more about things below? And it's something really to think about when we make a decision about to come or not to come. Why is it we would not come? Is it seeking things above or things below? But I'll tell you about this decision-making thing. I don't want to leave this out. You shouldn't decide about worshiping. You should have already decided. When you became a Christian, you should have decided then, "I'm going to be there." And then that decision is made. And when Wednesday night comes or Sunday morning comes, you don't make the decision. It's already made. It's time to go. And unless something that you can't help is there and prevents it, okay. But the decision to go has already been made. In Philippians chapter 4 and verse 8, it says, "Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. The things which you have learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace will be with you." Here, Paul is trying to get us to train our thinking, that whatever things are good and worthy, and meditate on these things. Well, what are we thinking about when it's time to assemble? What are we thinking about when it's time to be engaged in Bible study? Are we thinking, well, it's getting close to 12 and I've got this and that and other to do and we should be leaving here pretty soon. Sometimes our mind is on what's next. What's next? And sometimes that even prevents us from coming. And again, I know I'm talking to people who are here. But if we're meditating on things above, then our mind is not so focused on everything else. No, we're here. We're in the moment. We're not concerned, as again I was told some years ago, don't watch the clock. Well, we have sort of a tendency to do that, don't we? I mean, we do. But the idea is not to be thinking beyond where we are. We're here worshiping God. What better thing could you be doing on the Lord's Day than here worshiping God? And so our mind is on that. It's not on, there's a game coming on later. There's a restaurant I want to get to. There's a family thing I need to get involved with and see about. No, meditate. Think about the things that are good and noble and so on. What about your family? This is very important, is your family. Especially parents with young children. What you're doing right now is establishing a pattern, establishing some boundaries, establishing priorities. And your children will never forget it. I know in growing up, I was blessed to be raised in the church. And I never remember a discussion in my family about, well, it's Sunday morning. Are we going to Bible study or not? It's Sunday morning. That's what we do. It's Wednesday night. Are we going tonight? Well, it's Wednesday night. That's what we do. And it was just, there was never an argument about it. There was never my brother and my sister, we didn't try to talk mom and dad out of it. That would be, in our world, the most ridiculous thing we could have attempted to do. And if we had stayed at it, it would not have ended well. We would have probably had it reinforced. You don't go there. This is what we do. This is who we are as a family. And so your family is so important. And the effect of your absence carries through to your family. Your children are seeing, when do you go and when do you not go? What is a good reason not to go? Or what is it that is so important you're going to be there? Going to church. That was going to happen. And so our family is being influenced. We read in Ephesians 6 and verse 4, and you fathers, do not provoke your children to wrath, but bring them up in the training and the admonition of the Lord. There's training involved, isn't it? And that training is sometimes repetition, but it's most often, isn't it, an example? This is what we do. Do you debate with your kids? Are you going to school today or not? Well, it's a school day. Yeah, you go to school. Well, this is the Lord's day. Do you debate if we're going or not? Well, it's the Lord's day. There's no debate about it. It's time for this or that to do with the Lord's work. Well, that's the time. And so that training and that admonition of the Lord is something that especially fathers are put, and you might say, in charge of. Wives, likewise, be submissive to your own husbands, that even if some do not obey the word, they without a word may be won by the conduct of their wives. The example that you set in this verse is even more important than the word. So, because you're showing the word, you're living the word. And so often it is that wives, without nagging, without fussing about it, are leading their husbands to the Lord. Well, how are they doing that without a word? Because maybe they're here. And maybe the life that they live at home and the demeanor that they have and the faith that they're showing is showing others the word. And so it is when we assemble. We're showing our family the word. That is important. That what we're doing here is not just something that's a tradition. It's not just something that's a habit. It's a matter of faith. And then what about you? What about you? The effect of your absence on you. It says a lot about who you are. In Psalm 1 and verse 2, but his delight is the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. That's part of it, isn't it? Deciding I want to be where spiritual things are going on. I want to hear and learn more about God and his word. I want to be at Bible study. I want to be at the extra times if I can. That Bible study is going on, because my delight is the law of the Lord, and in his law I meditate day and night. In Psalm 127, verse 1, it says, unless the Lord builds a house, they labor in vain that build it. Unless the Lord guards the city, the watchman stays awake in vain. See, everything about an assembly of the Lord's people, when worshiping in spirit and truth, is designed to build us up. And unless the Lord builds the house, well, the Lord is building his house in different senses. He builds it through each one of us, doesn't he? He builds it as the church as a whole. But unless the Lord builds the house, what kind of house are we building? Is it one based on our faith, based on sometime coming to the Lord's house in the sense of his people? And unless the Lord builds it, it's in vain. So we could spend our time building something else. We could be somewhere else this morning. We could be somewhere else Wednesday night and other times that we come together. Is the Lord building that? What he is building is a house of faith, something that builds us up, that encourages us, and that happens in part through our times of assembly. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 27, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. You know, it isn't always easy, is it? It's not always convenient. There are other things that sometimes we think, oh, I could be doing this and that, or I could get an early start on doing this other if I just didn't have to spend this time in worship. I'm surprised sometimes when sometimes people leave a few minutes before service is over. I'm thinking, what's another 10 minutes? Does another 10 minutes really make such a difference? And so I discipline my body. It's not always easy. Sometimes we don't feel like it. We're tired. We've worked all day. But it's part of our showing our priorities. That I discipline my body and bring it into subjection. No, Satan, I know I'm tired, but you're not going to talk me out of it. I'm going to be there. Now, if you're sick, yeah, you don't. Yeah. I was telling Flora was telling me a while ago, she said, now you just stay over there. Because I've been sick, but I'm not contagious now. Don't know how contagious I was. Jennifer never got it. But there's some things we don't want to share, right? But there are other things that Satan could use to say, oh no, you ought not to worry about it today. No, discipline your body. Bring it under subjection. Don't let Satan win those arguments. Yeah, you're tired. The kids are tired. They're grumpy. That whatever's going on. Bring it under subjection, lest I myself should become disqualified. Is it worth it? Always worth it. And usually when we push through and we do what really we struggled with, we come out stronger for it. And so, is God asking too much? We kind of bring these thoughts together into a close. Is God asking too much? I know you cannot see all of this. This is and some of it is just off the screen. This is a week right here. This is a calendar. It's a week's calendar. And it should say, you might can barely read it up there. I'm not sure why it's not fitting. But anyway, January the 7th through 13th. And you think about your week. And you think about asking the question now, is God asking too much? I mean, all this, assembly, and after all, going to church doesn't save you. And again, show me your faith without your works. So you think about that. Well, how much time do you have for the Lord? Isn't that a fair question? Now, the textbook answer is, all my time is for the Lord. But we're talking specifically about the time that we have to notch out of our lives and say, this time now I'm going to be in the assembly or at Bible study. That's what we're specifically talking about. I know there's application and there's every day and all of that. But how much time do you have? Well, we've got, can you see this over here? This little block of time over here is at 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock on Sunday. Oh, well, okay, I've got that. I'll set that hour aside. Out of all of this week, I've got an hour over here that I'm going to set aside for worship. Well, I could add another hour maybe to that and come to Bible study. Just add another hour out of the whole week. Well, then you go a little further with that. Well, then there's Bible class at 6:30 down here on Wednesday. Well, then you look at that, and then sometimes people have decided, no, I don't have that hour. They put it back up here. That's kind of hit and miss, or maybe I don't have that time at all. And then I said, well, I don't know if I had time for that Bible study either. And so you look at the whole week and maybe get the worship hour. How much time do we have for the Lord? So again, is God just asking too much? It's really, when you think about your whole week, you think, well, not really. Not really. In fact, if you look in your Bibles in the New Testament, you'll find more examples of daily worship than one day worship. Paul said, I was with you daily. I was with you publicly and house to house. It's something to think about. Well, before I leave this point, let me go back to this. Parents, you have a difficult job. Raised my two boys, and I know you have a difficult job. And I think life is busier now than ever. There's so much going on. But how we decide, we allow, well, I keep leaving where I want to be. We are teaching our children where they want to be and what's important in life. And so the times that we make decisions about these various times, they get that. And when they grow up, they're going to make similar decisions based on what they remember as they were raised. And so it's very important what we allow to come in the way of Bible study or other activities we might be having. That's surely worship service. What we allow to take the place of that, we have to be very careful about. Whether it's school, whether it's activities, whatever it is, what takes the place of that? And so those are hard decisions, and those are decisions that it's hard to be consistent. But it's decisions that last a lifetime to our children. And so I go back to my question then, is God asking too much? And I thought about it this way. Ask it again. Is God asking too much? When you consider what Jesus has done for us, what it took for us to be saved, is God asking too much? I don't think so. And so we're challenged, aren't we? We're challenged to seek first the kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things would be added. We're challenged to love the Lord our God with all of our heart, with all of our soul, our strength, our mind. That's the challenge, to put Him first. And so the effect of our absence is far-reaching, and it's something for us to think about. And again, I know I'm talking to people who are here, but as we move forward in this new year, let's be present. Let's be present with the work the church has. And so the effect of our absence is profound. But so is the effect of our presence. And that's what we want to keep, is our presence here with the Lord first and with the work.
You are my God.